David Orr joins me now. He's the Chief Revenue Officer at Halo Labs. David, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, David, so as the Chief Revenue Officer, your ass is on the line every day, obviously.
Yes, in some ways, yeah.
And,
some days more than others.
Yeah, so we're familiar with the product line of Halo Labs. I'm more interested in the strategic direction. Like, what made you come up with a thing like a DabTab? That is something that I've never seen anywhere. Nobody else has them. I'm assuming there's some IP around that.
Yes, there is, definitely. Great question. And we're really looking at DabTabs with the same level of excitement and differentiation. I think most would admit, the industry in and of itself is, like most, somewhat Me Too. So there's a tremendous amount of competition, a tremendous amount of brands and product offerings that basically are the same thing. We look at DabTabs as a really true breakthrough innovation in the cannabis industry.
Yeah.
And it's a ceramic-based tablet that you can infuse with microdosing kind of mindset and allow it to be equidosed across any number of potential fills. You can fill it with live resin, shatter, distillate, et cetera. So CBD, THC.
Right.
So as we think about the opportunities for the product, we really do see it as something that not only from an innovation and news perspective is great, but also something that actually delivers different benefits to consumers. Yeah,
so the precise dose concept is something that I think is part of what's alienating a whole potential audience for cannabis, in that if you smoke dried flower, you don't know how much you're inhaling, you don't know exactly what you're getting. When you consume an edible, you don't know exactly how much you're eating or when it's going to hit you or how long it's going to last. So precision dosing, is that targeting an older, more mature audience?
I'd actually say it's targeting a broad audience, not necessarily older and mature. I think as the market matures, I think now as cannabis becomes hopefully, a much more kind of common, enjoyable experience across consumers, I think you're going to see people that are going to, not only from an education perspective, but also just from a perspective of having control, they're going to want that. So again, we think about how the category, you asked me about strategy, I think we're constantly thinking about how the industry is going to evolve, and I think being able to have measured doses is something that consumers are going to be looking for across the board. This product is one of the first. I would assume that there'll be more downstream.
Yeah, you bet. We heard from CEO Kiran Sidhu earlier, and he sort of indicated that the company is on track for fantastic revenue this year. How do you transplant this success story onto the other states as they become legal?
Again, we are optimistic about what we'll be able to do here, and Karen particularly, which hence, I laughed because you talked about, where I fall, and that's the kind of pressure that we're self-imposing a little bit, because we really are optimistic about what we can do. With that said, I think our kind of footprint really is twofold, and I'm sure Kieran talked about this. We offer branded products, which you see an example of here, and also white label. And as we look to expand not only in the states that we're in, but in other states, it really is to focus on both of those potential revenue streams and really think about how we optimize them. Branded products will be a big part of it, but also the opportunity to capitalize on our expertise in cannabis extraction and provide quality white label products for others, we also see as a really big revenue stream for us.
Okay, so in terms of owning additional states and territories, getting your products into other states, is it Halo's sort of strategic direction to wait for federal deprohibition, or are you planning to sort of incrementally establish a presence in each of the states as it's possible?
I'd say it's more the latter, for sure. I think the challenge for us, and probably like many others, is just to be as prudent and disciplined as you can. We want to go in and be able to have the same traction in the markets that we've had in the states that we're in. So if 3 states opened up, next week, I don't think we'd be running over ourselves to try to get in all 3. I think we'd look at each state, see which ones presented the best opportunities for us, see what the regulatory environment would be in each state, see which ones would allow us to optimize our kind of footprint, if you will, in those states, and we'd probably approach it that way as opposed to just chasing states as they open.
Yeah, you bet. So you're obviously got your eyes on Europe, as is evidenced by your Lesotho operations. Is the plan to offer, because Europe's primarily medical at this plant, is the plan to be able to ship product into the European market as a medical product?
Yes, I think we're looking at both. the thing that's exciting and challenging at the same time is the speed at which the market is evolving. So I think, Europe, much like many places in the U.S., started as medical. The thought with that those markets would continue to evolve. I think for us right now, the footprint is to get in to Europe the way we can, which would be with a medical footprint, but then be prepared to be able to expand as that market potentially evolves. I think not much different here. Our product lineup currently is primarily THC, but we're actively exploring CBD lineups because there are going to be market opportunities for both. And I think, that market might be more medical, but I think it's going to be an evolution.
Yeah, you bet. Europe is slower moving than the rest of the world. What about Latin America?
I'd say we see all the markets as potential opportunities, right? And I think Latin America is one that we'd be eager and anxious in. There's a couple places specifically we've talked about exploring, and I think that's what we will continue to do. Kieran is very forward-thinking in how he's thinking about approaching different markets as they open. So I'd say there's probably not a market we're not thinking about. Again, I think the challenge for us is to try to be as pragmatic as possible to ensure that when we go into the markets, we can have the same level of success that we've had thus far.
Right. So do you think that there's a likelihood that countries who ultimately gravitate towards legalization are going to try to protect the economic opportunity inherent in legalization for national companies at the expense of international companies who would be importers into those countries?
I don't know. I think my answer would be largely subjective. I think I would agree with you. Yes, I think there will be some of that. I think as it becomes more political, as it gets more ingrained into the revenue streams and everybody's thinking about how that would play out, I think you are going to have, just like in every other kind of industry, some lobbying, some kind of elbowing to try to see who could be first in line. As we would say, it would lend itself to some of the bigger, larger nationals getting maybe shots at opportunities that others might not.
Right. The landscape of pure extractors is pretty limited globally, and really it's I mean, you can't really argue with the idea that the pure extractors who have evolved and succeeded as pure extractors are, very strong financially in terms of cost of capital, in terms of generating investor interest. And Halo, at this point, I would categorize as probably one of the least expensive among all of the pure extractors. And so is it safe for me to conclude as an investor, without being too patronizing, that this is evidently an early stage situation that might actually be undervalued?
Absolutely. I think that's more than fair, actually. Yeah. And I don't think it's a stretch at all. I mean, if you look at our financials, if you look at where we are, you look at what we're doing, I think any kind of look at that would say undervalued. But financials aside, I think what we continue to really reinforce for us is the expertise and knowledge that we've built up in extraction. And I think as the industry evolves, those that have proven expertise, understanding, and knowledge, whether it be in cultivation, extraction, candidly the retail space, I think all of those folks are going to be the ones that are the strongest in position for the most success, whether that be financially, stock-wise, or other.
Do you think there's a risk that price war evolves from commodification of the underlying feedstock, cannabis itself, as a result of the fact that it's easy to grow and all countries are rushing towards growing it? How soon till we're oversaturated, the price of cannabis collapses to the point where it makes no financial sense to fill these devices?
Hopefully that's a long way, but I do think there are real economic kind of factors that are in play, and I think candidly in the U.S. we've seen, whether it be in states like Colorado or Oregon, some of those dynamics that you've just mentioned. And I think there's going to be a number of things. I think the market is going to equalize the supply-demand equation. I think some of the regulation is going to come in. I think candidly the market is probably going to force some people out that don't have the resources, expertise, depth of knowledge to really survive. I think it will get to a point of survival, and then I think once you get past that, you will start to see, like in any other industry, the market itself start to really stabilize what it'll be. The commodity aspect is something that's going to always exist. It is in many ways a commoditizable product. So I think, again, It's going to be a shorter line of people that are able to really get in and stay in, but I do think that there will be opportunities for those that are able to stay to absolutely create models that make sense financially.
You bet. All right, David, let's leave it there for now. We'll come back to you soon. Thanks for joining me today.
Sounds great. Thanks so much.